of the individual perpetrators of these outrageous acts, but also state terrorism in the form of the wars that have been conducted by Blair, by Bush in relation to Iraq, in Afghanistan, and the wars that are taking place in the Middle East at the present time. These events were terrible, in particularly the way that they were aimed at children. These can only be described as kind of fascistic type acts, things that you associated with Hitler or Mussolini. Not that it's possible to have a kind of fascist party or regime similar to that today, but there are elements of this kind of fascistic, inhuman approach in these particular events. But the cause of this is not just in the individual, the deranged individual that take these actions, or the organizations behind them. It's also in the actions of capitalist governments who've marauded through the Middle East, through Afghanistan, have killed sometimes in half an hour as many children as were killed in Manchester, and no matter where it is, it's outrageous. We oppose terrorism for a number of reasons, because it's usually by individuals or small groups substituting themselves for the great mass of working people. The methods that we employ is the methods of the labour movement, of the picket line, of demonstrations, of meetings, of strikes, of general strikes to effect change. So we condemn them on that basis as well.
And how do you think the government itself has responded to the attack?
Well, typically in the sense that they try and parade themselves as representatives of the people, as a patriotic government, so on and so forth. They're weeping tears for the children of Manchester, and in some cases it's probably very genuine. All human beings would regret what is taking place, but objectively they are crocodile tears and the government has crocodile teeth, because at the same time as they're putting in the boot to working people before these outrageous events in relation to the attacks on working people that we can describe, at the same time they're weeping about the suffering now of these unfortunate children in Manchester, and there's been outrage throughout the world. But we have to have the same outrage where other people's children are killed in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and so on, and it's happening on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. And you've already touched on the wars that British governments, both Tory and Labour, recently have prosecuted. Do you think these have been the key issue or a major issue?
This is a major cause of terrorism, and let me repeat, Scott, what I said before, that we opposed the war in Afghanistan. We were outraged, like the majority of humankind, to the 9/11 attack on the Twin Towers, where about 3,000 people originally were cited as being killed. But the important thing is it gave the excuse for Bush and for Blair to organise the so-called war on terror. And it wasn't a war on terror. It was an excuse to go into Afghanistan and then Iraq, and for one reason, to enhance the strategic power of British and American imperialism, and particularly because of the oil reserves of the Middle East. This was a demonstration of the power of world capitalism. And from then on to today, in relation to Syria, the capitalists have no solution to the problems of working people. Ultimately, the cause of terrorism is poverty, it's the violence, it's the repression, and one of the outcomes of terrorism is it gives the excuse for capitalist governments to introduce repression. And that repression is aimed against the labour movement, the working class, but particularly against the democratic rights of working people. That's not the road to go down. To his credit, Jeremy Corbyn, in his broadcast today, has come out against that. And he's been very sympathetic, for instance, to the police and the role of the police, because they're affected by the crisis of capitalism like we all are at the present time. And to the ordinary soldiers as well. He's made an appeal to them. And of course we agree with that. But we have to change society. To eradicate terrorism, to eradicate the misery from which breeds terrorism, we have to change society. Mm-hmm.
I'm Rob from Bristol Socialist Party. We're here at the NHS demo, anti-cuts in NHS. We had about 600 people marching down Gloucester Road. Feeling is a bit of anger, people are up for the fight. We've got Ken Loach speaking, everyone's favourite. And yeah, we had a good day, sold tons of papers, got tons of signatures, so I think people are up for getting socialist ideals in. I think people agree with Jeremy Corbyn's policies, and there's a feeling of positivity that we can get them out, get the Tories out on the 8th of June.
We're the Manchester Socialist Party, and we're here today doing a regular stall in Market Street, campaigning against terrorism, war, racism and austerity. We're having a really good response today. People, although they're still reeling a bit from the attacks, I think people have come together in solidarity, and people are looking towards the future, looking towards the election, and looking towards solutions so we can end the cycle of violence, looking towards funding our policing and funding our NHS and the vital services which were threatened with closure, which were heavily used during that attack, to a point which they wouldn't be able to do again after the cuts which have been promised. We've had a really good response off people. We've had a bunch of lads who were so enthusiastic and telling us what they thought Theresa May, but they nearly knocked the table down and broke a piece off. And just in general, we've had a really warm response. People really looking towards anti-austerity politics, £10 an hour and trade union rights, the NHS, renationalisation, are all back on the agenda, and that's what everyone's talking about here today, and they're all really pleased to see us saying it.
And on Jeremy Corbyn and coming to the general election itself, how do you think these events could impact on the outcome of the election on the 8th of June?
Well, it's very difficult to say exactly in which way they will have an impact. They've already had a big impact because Theresa May was on the ropes. Let's be clear about this. The terrorists played into the hands of Theresa May. She didn't want this, she didn't desire it, she didn't organise it, but she politically has attempted to profit from this to enhance her position. Because of the blunders that Theresa May has made, for instance on the so-called Alzheimer's tax, on the austerity regime that she will perpetrate, because despite what she tries to picture herself as a friend of the people, as the Tory party, a new reincarnation of a workers' party, which is absolutely laughable against the background of the measures that have been taken against ordinary working people in Britain. She has attempted to profit on that. And you can have a situation where you have a state of emergency, a semi-state of emergency like we have in Britain. They've been allowed to now introduce the idea of the army on the streets. That won't solve the problem. I mean, just as in France, the army have been on the streets and there's still been terrorist outrages. I repeat, we have to get to the causes of terrorism, which is in the objective conditions that face working people. And how the election will pan out is very difficult to say. But it's noticeable that the opinion poll soon after the election showed, and it was a reflection of the period prior to these events, that the support for the Theresa May government is collapsing. It's grown for Corbyn. It doubled the lead that is now in Wales, in your own hometown of Wales. And that perhaps is a little taste of what can happen on an all-British scale. I just want to make a few points about the election manifesto. Both the Tory party manifesto, which spells out really, if you look at the underlying message it's giving, that it will be business as usual if Theresa May government is elected. On the other hand, the manifesto of Labour, both when it was leaked, but when it was publicised, when it was officially launched, represents a new departure for the Labour movement. The central planks of it is the cancellation of tuition fees, not in the dim and distant future, but this is particularly important for young people because tuition fees was really the greatest blow that has been struck against young people and the future, because young people are the future, when it was introduced by, let us remember, by the Tony Blair government with the avid support of the Tories. And he almost came to grief on this question because he came very narrow. The majority was very narrow in the Commons. In fact, the opposition was greater even than on the Iraq war towards tuition fees. So when Jeremy Corbyn said boldly, we're going to cancel tuition fees and we're going to start this in September, that's a huge boost potentially to millions of young people in Britain. That could be an election winner by itself. Similarly, the question of the nationalisation of rail, of the post office, of water, of energy and so on, that represents a huge step forward. And what does it represent? It represents a rejection of privatisation carried out both under Tony Blair and under the successive Tory governments itself. And it means that people are looking for a new way to organise industry and so on. And by the way, we say to Labour spokesmen, we'll give you a little bit of advice, don't enter into a Dutch auction about how much these measures will cost. Once you're in a position to see the books, which you would be in relation to taking power, and you see the real situation and call on the support of working people, there would be overwhelming support to start in those industries. But why start just there and leave it? Why not go on to take over other parts of the commanding heights of the economy and organise a socialist plan of production? This manifesto frightened the ruling class. In the time that's left, they will do everything to hold on to power. As I've said, they will sell their grandmothers. And as the Alzheimer's tax proposal shows, they'll sell other people's grandmothers as well. We have to defeat them. We have to ensure that a Tory government a Labour government will come to power, and then we have to exert power on that government to stand up to the blackmail of the capitalists, the banks and the rest of it, and put forward a programme for the real socialist future of Britain and particularly of working people. And how will the pressure be organised to ensure that this will be the case? Well, let's envisage a situation the morning after the election, and a Corbyn government is elected, and people are dancing in the streets. And if they were not drinking champagne, well, the working class equivalent of a pint of beer will be out on the streets campaigning. We have to say, mobilise this power in order to ensure that we create an atmosphere that there's overwhelming support for the programme that Corbyn has stood on to be put into practice. Then we'd put the other parties, such as the SNP and other parties, on the spot. The right wing of the Labour Party are plotting already for the position after the election, when they hope that they can stymie a minority Labour government. I think that the only way to counter that is mass mobilisation of working people and the youth, of the trade unions, of all the organisations of the labour movement, to ensure that a Corbyn government is safely installed in power and gets down to the business of changing the face of Britain in the direction of socialism once and forever.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thanks for answering those questions. And of course, between now and the election, the Socialist Party will continue to campaign, to fight for a socialist-led, a Corbyn-led socialist government. And we hope you found this discussion interesting, and we want to hear from you what you think about the election, what Peter's just discussed. And of course, get in touch with us. The contact details should be on the screen right now. And even more importantly, come along to one of our meetings to discuss how we're fighting in this general election, fighting for Corbyn on socialist policies. Follow us, like us, visit our website, and thanks for watching. See you next time.